Look, when we look out at the world, Samir, we look for partners. We don't look for preachers. Particularly preachers who don't practice at home what they preach abroad. And I think some of Europe is still struggling with that problem.
You just heard India's External Affairs Minister, Dr. S. Jaishankar. That was a direct message to Europe. India wants equal partners, not lectures. So what sparked this sharp comment? Hello and welcome to Connecting the Dots. I'm Shubhendu Ghosh. Let's break down the hypocrisy and double standards in Europe's stand on terrorism. On April 22nd, terrorists opened fire on tourists in Jammu and Kashmir's Pahalgam. 26 people were killed, several others injured in the attack. The Resistance Front, a proxy of Pakistan-based terrorist group Lashkar-e-Toiba, has claimed responsibility for the attack. And look at the pattern of the attack. The terrorists asked for the religious identity of the victims, singled out non-Muslims before killing them. It's all hatred. The masterminds are sitting safely in Pakistan. And now see the stance of Europe. After the Pahalgam terror attack, EU High Representative for Foreign Affairs and Security Policy and Vice President of the European Commission, Kaja Kallas, held separate calls with India's External Affairs Minister, Dr. S. Jaishankar, and Pakistan's Deputy Prime Minister, Ishaq Dar. What did she say? Look at her post on social media platform X. Kallas wrote, "The tensions between India and Pakistan are alarming, urged both sides to show restraint. She claimed escalation helps no one, urged the pursuit of dialogue to ease the situation. India has been dealing with cross-border terrorism for decades. New Delhi expects stronger condemnation of state-sponsored terrorism. Pakistan has been serving as the launchpad for terrorist organizations targeting India since independence." Just see this. December 13th, 2001. Terrorists belonging to Pakistan-based terrorist organization Jaish-e-Mohammed attacked India's parliament. 9 people were killed in the attack. It's believed that the terrorists received instructions, support from Pakistan's Inter-Services Intelligence or ISI. July 11th, 2006. Over 180 people were killed in serial bomb blast in Mumbai suburban trains. Who were the perpetrators? Pakistani terrorist group Lashkar-e-Toiba. On November 26, 2008, Lashkar-e-Toiba terrorists carried out coordinated attacks across Mumbai, including at Taj Hotel, Oberoi Trident, CST railway station and Nariman House. 166 people were killed, over 300 injured. Ajmal Kasab, the only surviving terrorist at that time, confirmed Pakistan's involvement. September 18th, 2016. Jaish-e-Mohammed terrorists attacked an Indian army camp in Jammu and Kashmir's Uri in early morning hours. 18 Indian army soldiers were killed. Following this, India conducted the surgical strikes across the border. February 14th, 2019, a suicide bomber belonging to Pakistani terrorist group Jaish-e-Mohammed rammed an explosive-laden vehicle into a convoy of Indian paramilitary forces in Pulwama district of Jammu and Kashmir. 40 CRPF personnel were killed. It was one of the deadliest attacks on Indian security forces in decades. The list goes on. This was a reminder of Pakistan-sponsored terrorism against India. But what does the European Union say? The EU asks both sides to show restraint. It seems to treat the attacker and the victim as equals, even though Pakistan's role in attacks in Jammu and Kashmir and other parts of the country is clear. Leaders like Kallas, who often speak against terrorism, still ask India to negotiate and engage in dialogue with Pakistan. The EU's reaction to terrorism seems unfair. It takes a strong stand when its own safety is at risk, but expects India to stay calm, talk to the country that supports terrorism in India. This shows a clear double standard. If the EU really wants to fight terrorism, it should follow the same rules for everyone. There should be no talks with terrorists and no room for double standards just to suit politics. Now let's listen to India's External Affairs Minister, Dr. S. Jaishankar.
When we look out at the world, Samir, we look for partners. we don't look for preachers, particularly preachers who don't practice at home what they preach abroad. And I think some of Europe is still struggling with that problem. I mean, in many ways, Europe, I think, has entered a certain zone of reality check. But from our point of view, if we are to develop a partnership, there has to be some understanding, there has to be some sensitivity, there has to be a mutuality of interest, and there has to be a realization of how the world works.
Since the war began between Ukraine and Russia, Western countries, including the EU, have been urging India to cut ties with Russia. They wanted India to take a stand against Russia. But Russia has always supported India, even when the West stayed silent during the conflicts with Pakistan. A few years ago, Europe enjoyed a balanced setup: American protection, Russian energy, access to Chinese markets. But that changed in February 2022, when the war in Ukraine broke out. It shook Europe's security and ended that balance. In 2022, the West criticized India for buying cheap oil from Russia. But reports showed that Western countries were actually the biggest buyers, not India. Still, India stayed firm, said Russia is a trusted partner. India's Foreign Minister S. Jaishankar also pointed out earlier Western efforts to solve the war left Russia out, which he said made no sense.
We've always felt that the wars, international relations is conducted on the basis of some fundamental realism, and that realism requires an engagement with Russia. And the idea that a solution would come about, because if you remember, there was a period when countries were gathering and everybody was there except Russia, and they were discussing Russia. So the idea that you will get a solution out of Russia without inviting Russia challenged, the basics of realism. So we have felt always that there is a need to engage Russia.
He also reminded the West that for years they chose to supply arms to Pakistan. However, ties between India and EU are getting stronger. In February, top EU leaders, including President Ursula von der Leyen, visited India, their first trip in the new term. So to sum it up, when India is hit by terrorism, Europe calls for restraint. When it's about Ukraine, the same Europe demands strong action. When India defends its interests, it's told to follow rules. But when Europe does the same, it's called diplomacy. India is not asking for favors, it's asking for fairness, equal partners, not double standards. On Wednesday, May 7th, a group of 135 men will enter the Sistine Chapel with a shout of extra homines, that is Latin for everyone out. The doors will be sealed and the process to elect the next Pope of the 1.4 billion member Roman Catholic Church will begin. The process of electing a new Pope is called Papal Conclave. The word conclave comes from the Latin for with the key. It stems from a tradition that started in the 13th century, where cardinals were locked up to force them to decide as quickly as possible and limit outside interference.
Sede vacante means empty seat. The sede vacante is the period between the death of one pope and the election of another. Right now, there is no pope. So the seat of St. Peter's, as it is called, or the see of St. Peter's, but usually the seat of St. Peter's, is empty. No one is sitting on the throne.
Cardinals from around the world have descended on Rome following the death of Pope Francis. Cardinals aged 80 or over can attend the general congregation but are not allowed to enter the conclave to choose the next pope, which is a gathering of cardinals under the age of 80. The conclave is held in the Sistine Chapel. During the election, the participants are prohibited from any communication with the outside world. Phones, internet, newspapers are not allowed. and Vatican police use electronic security apparatus to enforce the rules. Except for the first day of the conclave, when there is one vote, the cardinals vote twice a day.
It is almost impossible that a new pope will be chosen on the first day, the first ballot on the first afternoon. What normally happens is that a lot of names are thrown out just to cast out there, just to sort of, say, as a sign of respect to people. Everybody knows that they're not going to be chosen as pope. So the real voting begins the next day, on the second day.
A majority of 2/3 plus 1 is needed for election. If no one is elected after 13 days, a runoff is held between the two leading candidates, but 2/3 plus 1 majority is still needed. This is to promote unity and discourage seeking compromise candidates. When the conclave has elected a pope, he's asked if he accepts and which name he wishes to take. If he declines, the procedure starts again. Once the new pope is chosen, the senior elector among the cardinal deacons steps onto the central balcony of St. Peter's Basilica to announce the good news.
Annuncio vobis gaudium magnum, habemus papam.
The new pope then appears and gives the crowd his first blessings as pontiff. While the papal election takes place in secrecy, some names have emerged on top as the likely candidate to succeed Pope Francis. Cardinal Pietro Parolin, 70 years old, from Italy, has been a church diplomat for most of his life and served as Pope Francis's Secretary of State since 2013, the year Francis was elected. Cardinal Peter Erdo, 72 years old, Archbishop of Budapest, Hungary, is known for his support of the Pope's outreach to Orthodox Christians. Cardinal Pier Battista Pizzaballa, the Patriarch of Jerusalem, is only 60 and much younger than all the other contenders and is one of the favorites. For the first time in history, fewer than half of those given a vote will be European. At 71, the conclave will see more cardinals coming from different countries than ever before. In the last papal election in 2013, they came from 48 countries. In 2005, it was 52 countries. Luis Antonio Tagle, 67 years old, former Archbishop of Manila, would be the first Asian pope if he wins the vote. He comes from a region with the fastest growing Catholic population. Cardinal Peter Turkson, the Ghanaian prelate, Cardinal Robert Serra of Guinea, and Cardinal Fridolin Ambongo Besungu, Archbishop of Kinshasa, are some important names from Africa. And ahead of the crucial voting, cardinals shared what was on their mind.
We really do not know. We just wait for the Lord to tell us. It's not our time, it's God's time. Yeah, so I think it's important that the cardinals really get to know each other, hear each other out, and to pray and to ask for the Lord's direction.
I
don't know if it will be a long one. It depends. It depends if the cardinals find the right person.
Pray for us. Thank you. It's a beautiful experience. I come from Chile, a far-away country. I'm a cardinal from the end of the world, so seeing cardinals from all over the world with such different experiences is beautiful.
This is my first time to join the congregation.
Oh, you just arrived?
Meanwhile, Catholic Church cardinals attended the final morning mass for late Pope Francis just 3 days before the gathering in conclave to elect his successor. According to an ancient custom, special celebrations in suffrage of the deceased pontiff takes place for 9 consecutive days, which are called novendiali.
Abbiamo tutti ammirato
We have all admired how Pope Francis, animated by the Lord's love and carried by his grace, has been faithful to his mission to the utmost consumption of his forces. He admonished the powerful that they must obey God rather than men and proclaim to all humanity the joy of the gospel, the merciful Father, Christ the Savior.
Amidst the election, some political distractions also made news. An AI-generated photo showing himself as the Pope just days after he joked he would like to be a Pope. The image shows an unsmiling Trump seated in an ornate chair, dressed in white papal vestments and headdress, with right forefinger raised.
As Pope? I'd like to be Pope. That would be my number one choice. No, I don't know. I have no preference. I must say we have a cardinal that happens to be out of a place called New York who's very good. So we'll see what happens.
The irreverent posting drew mixed reactions from members of public in Rome. Some expressed shock, some were offended, but others just dismissed the image as a joke or attempt to grab attention. Earlier, Vatican workers were seen installing a chimney inside and on the roof of the Sistine Chapel, along with an elevated flooring and tables for the impending conclave. The chimney's various pipes and parts, which will be used in burning the ballots for the conclave that will elect a successor to Pope Francis. The chimney is clearly visible from nearby St. Peter's Square, where thousands are expected to gather during the conclave to see how the secret balloting is progressing. As is the tradition, black smoke will signify no decision. White will announce that 267th Pope has been elected. Thanks for watching. That's all in this edition of Connecting the Dots. We'll see you in the next episode with more raging issues. Until then, it's a goodbye from all of us in the Delhi newsroom. This is Shubhendu Ghosh signing off. Take care. Stay safe.